We're happy to have Damien Sneed back on the Journal of Gospel Music. Hello, Damien.
Hello, Bob. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Doing well.
Well, it's been some time. I know a while ago we talked with you and Lawrence Brownlee about spiritual sketches.
Yes.
I see you are even busier now.
Yes, very, very busy with the label, yes.
Well, first of all, tell us a little bit about Broken to Minister, the deluxe edition. I know that comes out on March 3rd?
Yes, Tuesday, March 3rd. The release date for Broken to Minister, the deluxe edition, and the reason it's called the deluxe edition is because the EP was released in November of 2013, which featured the title track, Broken to Minister, but now there's a reprise that my label co-founder, another action artist on my independent label with Chateau Earl Records, with Chateau Earl, my middle name was Chateau.
Oh, okay.
Her middle name, Earl, that's Iona E. Locke. She comes back and does a phenomenal spoken word exhortation after that, and the project has every type of gospel music you could think of, from traditional to contemporary. There are hymns, there's praise and worship songs, the Nigerian praise and worship song. There's so many wonderful selections over there that everyone will enjoy listening to.
And tell us a little bit about the Levites. How did you discover them? How did you bring them together?
The Levites are all friends of mine and colleagues that I have run into over the past few years in the New York City area. Tiffany Stevenson, Mattia Washington, Sinead Campbell, Jory Nance, Lynette McNeil. Some of them I've taught them at colleges and universities in the area. Some of them I met them at churches. Some of them we went to the same church. Or I got one of them I actually met even at Juilliard when I was working there. So they're a great collection of singers who are all artists in their own right. And they have a wonderful blend of wonderful sounds. And I'm glad to feature them on this project as well as soloists.
Well, and I know you are skilled at many styles of music, and I wanted to ask you about that. I was talking to somebody earlier this week about languages, and they said how they know several languages, and they kind of compartmentalize the languages almost in their brain so that they can pull on them without combining them. How do you produce gospel and classical music and jazz? Do you when you work within a specific genre, do you just pull upon that area, or do you kind of blend them all together?
Interesting. I was teaching a course at New York University, and I was speaking to one of my students this week, actually 2 or 3 days ago, about the exact same thing, and when approaching singing, and we were working with the aria, de Prix le Jour. We were working with that aria for soprano, and I was talking to them about separating languages and how you compartmentalize them, and even when it comes to applying music theory, how you compartmentalize the Dorian or Locrian mode as opposed to a regular scale or a natural minor, harmonic, relative minor, key center. And it's very interesting you say that, because one of my students asked me, we were actually analyzing in another class one of the pieces from the new project, and they said, so how do you play the different genres, and do you actually think about all these things at the same time, classical and jazz and, American music and gospel or, traditional sacred music, or do you actually blend the two? It really depends. If it's my own composition, of course, definitely a blend. It's a hybrid of different things, but I'm very intentional. Even when composing, when creating something of my own, I'm very intentional with what hybrid it will be and what I'm pulling from. I like to think of my creative time as having a palette, as an artist would, and pulling from different paint colors to be able to mix my own color or to be able to create a masterpiece. However, when I approach someone else's music or someone else's work, of course I like to put my own artistic style on it and my own artistic stamp or signature, fingerprint. However, I really like to get into the mind of the composer or the creator. So if I'm conducting Marsalis, I'm going to put exactly whatever that work is calling for. If I'm doing something by Franz Liszt, then I'm going to definitely make sure it's straight classical. If I'm doing something that is to Puccini, I'll make sure I'm conducting the Puccini aria correctly or playing it. So I tell most musicians, this is something great for the people that are even receiving this interview. I think when you approach music, it's a wonderful thing to get into the mind of the composer, to try to capture and line up, be parallel with the moment where they receive that creative download or that outpour. And that's a great question. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that way back even in the beginning of gospel history, we talk about gospel music in particular being improvisational and, the artist putting his or her own spin on it. And then you realize that a lot of the original founders had some classical training or could read music or, brought, people in. So it seems like there's been a kind of a classical underpinning throughout.
You know, it's so interesting that you say that, Bob, because that same classroom setting,
Yeah.
we ended the class speaking about that exact same thing, that many of even the great classical fathers that we made, or patriarchs like Bach and even Mozart, who created so many wonderful compositions at such an early age in his life before passing. A lot of these pieces were not written down on paper as we do now with publishing companies, the Schirmer or the Henley, edition of the Baron Reiter. They were actually pieces that the composers had a structure, had an idea, but they improvised every single time they performed it. There was a space for a cadenza, for a singer to sing. That's why when we hear the Handel's Messiah at Christmas time, when the soprano sings Rejoice Greatly, she may make it her own. And I think a lot of people, there's a strong disconnect between music of the past and gospel music, but actually classical music, a lot of it was supported by the church, because a lot of times in government, church and state weren't separated. And so when I talk to students and when I'm giving workshops for gospel and I let them know that, it gives them a sense of pride that with gospel music, there can be a sense of a standard and a sense that it is still a viable art form, just as romantic music may be, or symphonic music, or orchestral, or concerto. And I think that's something that we're coming to find out now, even about gospel music. And with the gospel catalog growing and growing, we're seeing now that there is really a true style and standard in this genre that we call gospel music. And of course it is improvised and it's given by divine inspiration of the Spirit. But at the same point, the music actually has its own motive and theme, and it takes on legs and walks in itself.
Very well said. In fact, it seems like you and Donald Lawrence, and then, back in the day, Thomas Whitfield, have sort of brought together a classical component to gospel. And do you see, when you're teaching students, do you see that there may be a possibility of even more of a classical influence in gospel music in the future?
Most definitely, and it's so interesting that you mentioned Thomas Whitfield, who I was introduced to his music by another mentor, Twinkie Clark, who's a phenomenal classical organist and pianist, and she includes it in her writing. And Donald Lawrence, who's another mentor of mine, who loves Twinkie Clark and loves Thomas Whitfield. Donald and I had this conversation a lot as well about the classical influences, and we were working together at the BMI Trailblazers Luncheon last year, where Donald had me come in and play a tribute to Richard Smallwood, who's a mentor of mine. Richard and Twinkie both went to Howard University, my alma mater.
Oh, right.
So to throw that in there. And, it's so interesting because there are some gospel writers, and I'll call them composers, who really include that element in their style and in their writing. And, when we see this, this sound, and it's something that people call classical. I know, but a lot of Richard Smallwood's writing is very similar to early classical and the Baroque music like Bach, people like that. And it's so vibrant. And a lot of times I've noticed that even in churches that are Pentecostal, or charismatic, when they get into what's called like a flow, or they're just playing worship music or the song of the Lord, what they actually are playing, or they're turning around in cyclical patterns, is they're actually playing like a Baroque theme, and they're just turning it around in a cycle. And so it's interesting. And then so interesting this interview, because I just did an example in class where I played for them a Bach prelude and fugue. And it focused on a couple of his preludes from Book 1, The World Temple Clavier. And then I played some Richard Smallwood songs. And I said, can you tell me the difference? And they said, it's the same progression. I said, exactly. So very interesting point that you're saying there.
That's a great segue, because I know you and your chorale Le Chateau were just featured in a film. Tell us about Everyone Has a Place.
Yes, that's the theme of Wynton Marsalis's Abyssinian Mass, a 2-hour through composed work. And I said through composed because many people think jazz is only, they just have a little lead sheet and they improvise, or gospel, people just sing and just play. But this is actually through composed, meaning similar to that of a classical composer, where every note is written out, everything is there on the page. It's definitely through composed, and we did a tour, 16 cities, called the Abyssinian Mass, a gospel celebration. We did that tour, and we actually had PBS follow us in one particular city. It was in Charlotte, North Carolina, at the Friendship Missionary Baptist Church. And while we were there, they recorded the choir rehearsing, getting off the bus, and did an interview with myself and Wynton and a few of the Jazz Lincoln Center Orchestra members, and my 70 voice choral group, Chorale Chateau. And that film is now debuting and premiering in different markets. PBS is putting it out in different markets across the country. Instead of just playing it, one night, all over the country, they're doing it in different markets. It's in Charlotte, it's getting ready to come to Detroit, and it'll be going to other markets all over the country over this year, and it's a great, great film.
Right, and I know that you can hear some of the snippets of the Abyssinian Mass on YouTube. I know some pieces are there, maybe all of it's there, but I know I've seen certain pieces there.
Most definitely, yes. It's on YouTube, and you can actually go to the Knight Foundation, and you can watch a trailer of the film, Everyone Has a Place. And basically, Winton was saying everyone has a place in the house of God. You know, the church is God's love is for everybody, so everybody can come and have their own place there in the house of God. It's a great, great work, and it was a great opportunity to be able to conduct my mentor's work and to conduct him even. That was an awesome opportunity.
Oh, I can imagine. And speaking of conducting, now I know you're making your conducting debut at Carnegie Hall. Tell us about that.
Yes, with the exact same work, the Abyssinian Mass, but this time it's going to be with the Jazz at Lincoln Center Youth Orchestra and a choir of high school students from all around the country, the World Stride Heritage Jazz Choir. It's going to be amazing on April 26th, Sunday. I think it's at 8 or 8:30 p.m. in the evening, and there are tickets available online at carnegiehall.org, and it's going to be very exciting to do. It's just a one-day revival, I guess, of the work, but it's going to be great.
Now, in addition, I know you taking off or already on the Broken to Minister promotional tour. What are some of the cities you'll be visiting?
Yes, we're going to be in Freeport, Long Island, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Maryland, Augusta, Georgia, my hometown, Charlotte, North Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina, Fayetteville, North Carolina, Atlanta, Georgia, Memphis, Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee, even going to Red Hook, New York, to Bard College, where I studied conducting at one time.
Oh, how wonderful.
They're going to be doing an event. So, yeah, it's going to be exciting, too. That's just some of the cities. There are going to be many others coming along, being added to that docket as well.
And Le Chateau Earl, who are some of the other artists that you are working on with your new label?
Of course, we have Lawrence Brownlee with Spiritual Sketches, Iowa Locke, her project Kingdom Victory, phenomenal artist out of Washington, D.C., Takesha Russell and her project Wondrous Things, and also Corral Chateau, who's going to be recording a project this year, so it's very exciting. They have some stuff out on the label, but they're going to be recording another project, so it's very, very exciting. And we're looking to sign some other artists as well.
Great. And is there a particular style of gospel or of sacred music that you're focusing on in the label?
Great question. Le Chateau Earl, my middle name Le Chateau. Earl, Iowa Locke's middle name. And Le Chateau, French word for large house or castle. Earl, which speaks of nobility.
Yeah.
Or, it's a Duke of Earl. And we are the House of Nobility.
Yeah.
So with the Le Chateau Earl stands for the House of Nobility, and we want to house artists that come from every type of specification or diversification of inspirational gospel music, whether it be classical, whether it be instrumental, whether it be traditional, contemporary. It doesn't matter. We want to be the house of nobility that houses every facet of music that gives God glory.
Well, I guess my final question then would be, is there an aspect of music or theater that you haven't tackled yet but would like to?
Well, I'll be conducting my first opera soon with the Asheville Lyric Opera.
Wow.
And that's going to be Verdi's Il Trovatore. So looking forward to that. Actually, you know what? That's not true. I have conducted an opera before. I did an opera Harriet Tubman last year in Albany.
Oh, wow.
With American Opera Projects. I forgot about that. But this will be my first time doing it with a larger opera company. And with a full orchestra. I've conducted a chamber orchestra, but this will be a full orchestra, so that's going to be very exciting.
Oh, sure. Does it seem at all daunting, or do you feel, confident you can get in there and do it?
Oh, I'm putting my work in now, just to make sure, as we started the conversation, to make sure that I, too, can not just sing every aria, but that I can actually speak the entire libretto and have understanding of it myself. And then I need to, really know the score very well, trying to memorize that, And so it's a lot of work, but I've got to put the time in. So it'll be so I can really effectively lead the orchestra and lead the wonderful vocalists that are coming together in the ensemble to make the production.
Well, Damien Sneed, congratulations on all of your accomplishments and those to come, and best wishes for the opera and Carnegie Hall and the PBS and the new double CD. Maybe we'll see you at the Stellar Awards.
Yes. Thank you so much, Bob.
Oh, my pleasure.